It was supposed to be a quiet morning on the south side of Atlanta. But what police discovered behind a small apartment complex would haunt even the most seasoned officers. A young woman, just 26 years old, lay lifeless beside her car. Her body was bruised, her hands still clutching her phone, and on its screen, a message she never got to send. She deserves to know. The woman's name was Tiana Brooks, bright, hopeful, and just weeks away from giving birth. To anyone who knew her, she was full of life and plans for the future. But on that cold morning, those plans ended in silence. Her death wasn't random. It wasn't a robbery. It was personal, painfully personal, because the man who ended her life was the same man who once told her he loved her, a man who promised her a future, a man who already had a wife and a family. Hours before her death, Tiana had done the unthinkable. She went to the home of the man she loved and told his wife the truth. She told her everything about the affair, the lies, and the baby she was carrying. That confrontation would set off a chain of events so dark, so irreversible, that by the end of the night, one woman would be dead, one family destroyed, and one man facing life in prison. How does love turn into violence? How does a secret become a death sentence? To understand that, we have to go back to when it all began, to the moment a faithful husband met the woman who would change everything.
On the surface, Derek Coleman had the kind of life many men dreamed of. A stable job, a loving wife, 2 beautiful children, and a modest home in the suburbs of Atlanta. He was known as a family man, dependable, hardworking, and always smiling at church on Sundays. Neighbors described him as polite and quiet, a man who cut his lawn every weekend, played catch with his kids after dinner, and kissed his wife goodbye every morning before heading to work. To the world, Derek was living the picture-perfect life, but behind that calm exterior, something darker was brewing. A restlessness, a hunger for excitement that home no longer gave him. It started small, a few casual glances, playful conversations, and compliments that went a little too far. And then, one ordinary afternoon, Derek met Tiana Brooks. She was 26, young, free-spirited, and full of life. She worked part-time at a local hardware store, saving up to start her own beauty business. The first time Derek walked in, she noticed his confidence, the way he carried himself, the ring on his finger, the polite smile that lingered just a second too long. He told her he was buying materials for a home project, but as days turned to weeks, he kept finding reasons to return. More paint, more supplies, more excuses. And before long, their conversations stretched longer than they should have. What began as harmless flirting turned into something that neither of them seemed ready to stop. Tiana found comfort in his attention, in the way he listened, in the way he made her feel seen. Derek, on the other hand, found escape from the pressure of responsibility, from bills, from arguments at home, from the weight of being the perfect husband. In Tiana's eyes, he wasn't just a married man. He was someone who understood her loneliness. And in Derek's eyes, she wasn't a mistake. She was temptation wrapped in warmth, a dangerous comfort he couldn't resist. Soon, he began lying. First to his wife, then to himself. Late nights at work, weekend shifts, emergency calls. But every lie bought him one more night in Tiana's arms. He told himself he could handle it, that no one would ever find out, that he could live 2 lives, the faithful husband, and the secret lover. But affairs have a way of taking root. And once they do, they start to grow in places you can't control. For Derek, that root would soon split his entire world in two. Because Tiana wasn't just another secret. She was the one who would expose everything he had worked so hard to hide. And when that moment came, Derek Coleman, the man with everything to lose, would lose it all.
At first, Derek thought he could keep everything under control. He told himself that what he shared with Tiana was just a temporary escape, a harmless secret in a busy life. He believed he could slip between two worlds without ever letting them collide. But love, or what we sometimes mistake for it, has a way of demanding more. It started with small things. Tiana wanted to see him more often. She wanted to go out, not just stay in her apartment with the blinds drawn. She wanted to be seen, to feel real. But Derek couldn't risk that. Every moment with her came wrapped in lies, lies that stacked higher with each passing week. He told her he was separated. He told her his wife, Monica, already knew. He even told her he was filing for divorce. Tiana believed him. Why wouldn't she? He spoke with conviction, promised her a future, and even whispered dreams about buying a new home together. But deep down, Derek knew none of it was true. He wasn't leaving his wife. He wasn't ready to face the destruction that honesty would bring. He wanted both worlds, the stability of his family and the thrill of forbidden love. And for a while, he managed to balance them. Weekdays were for family dinners and bedtime stories. Weekends, stolen afternoons and secret motel rooms. Yet, in the stillness after passion fades, guilt began to creep in. Derek noticed the way Monica's eyes lingered on him when he came home late, the way she asked gentle, probing questions about work, the way his children stopped running to the door because they never knew when he'd return. At the same time, Tiana's patience began to crumble. She wanted the man she loved to commit, to stop hiding her, to stop lying. And when she discovered she was pregnant, she thought that moment had finally come. But Derek's reaction was not joy. It was panic. He froze when she told him. His heart didn't race with excitement. It sank with fear. Because now the fantasy was over. The secret had become a responsibility. A baby meant exposure. A baby meant his double life couldn't remain hidden. He told her he needed time to figure things out, to handle his situation. But what he really meant was time to decide how to protect himself. Tiana, blinded by love and hope, believed him again. She imagined him holding their child, imagined a life built on new beginnings. But weeks passed, and Derek's calls grew shorter, his visits less frequent, and his tone colder. Tiana began to sense the truth. She wasn't part of a love story. She was part of a lie, one that was unraveling fast. Friends noticed the change in her. She stopped smiling the way she used to. She cried at night, whispering that she just wanted him to do the right thing. Derek, meanwhile, lived in quiet terror. He knew Tiana's pregnancy was a ticking clock, one that could blow up everything he'd built. His wife was already suspicious. His coworkers whispered when he took long lunch breaks. The world around him was closing in. And as that pressure grew, Derek made a choice, not with logic, but with fear. He began to distance himself completely. He ignored Tiana's messages. He blocked her calls. He pretended she didn't exist.
But Tiana wasn't going to disappear quietly. Not this time. Because she was carrying more than his secret. She was carrying his child, and she was done hiding. Soon she would decide to tell the one person Derek never wanted to find out, his wife. And that decision would cost her everything.
By the time summer rolled around, the cracks in Derek's carefully built double life were too wide to ignore. The affair that once felt thrilling now felt dangerous. Every call, every message from Tiana made his pulse quicken. Not from love, but from fear. He had stopped answering her calls. He avoided her street, her apartment, her voice. And yet, she was everywhere. In his thoughts, in his guilt, in his silence. Tiana's pregnancy was now showing. Her belly, once flat and soft, had grown, undeniable proof of the life she carried. Every movement reminded her of Derek's promises. "I'll be there for you. We'll raise this baby together." But now, he was nowhere to be found. Days turned into weeks. Her messages went unanswered. Her calls went straight to voicemail. When she finally reached him through a new number, his tone was sharp, defensive. He told her she was causing problems, that she needed to stop calling his house, and that things were complicated. To Tiana, those words felt like betrayal. To Derek, they were self-preservation. He wasn't thinking about her pain or her fear, only about his reputation, his marriage, his image. And as the guilt grew heavier, he started spinning new lies just to stay afloat. He told his wife Monica that a crazy woman had been harassing him, that someone from work was trying to destroy his life. He painted himself as the victim, hoping to plant doubt before the truth ever reached her ears. But Tiana was done being quiet. She was tired of being treated like a secret, tired of hiding behind closed blinds, waiting for a man who had no intention of keeping his word. She told a close friend, "If you won't tell his wife, I will. She deserves to know what kind of man he really is." Her friend begged her not to. She warned her that Derek was angry, unpredictable. But Tiana's mind was made up. She believed telling the truth was her only way out, her only chance to force Derek to take responsibility. Meanwhile, Derek's paranoia deepened. Every time his phone buzzed, he felt his chest tighten. Every conversation with his wife felt like a test, every question a trap. He knew the walls were closing in. He had built his entire life on deceit, and Tiana was about to bring it all crashing down. At work, his temper grew short. He snapped at coworkers, avoided eye contact, and isolated himself. At home, he barely spoke. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't think. He was living in a prison of his own making. Then came the text message that changed everything. It was short, direct. "I'm done keeping your secret. Your wife deserves the truth."
That message, simple as it was, hit Derek like a death sentence. He knew what it meant. The life he had tried to protect, the illusion of the perfect husband, the loyal father, was seconds away from being destroyed. He called her. Once. Twice. She didn't answer. Then, finally, she picked up. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She told him she was on her way to his house, that she wasn't scared anymore, that Monica needed to hear everything, from her, not from him. And in that moment, Derek's world started to crumble. The fear that had been simmering for months turned into pure panic. He knew once those words left Tiana's mouth, there would be no undoing the damage.
It was the moment every liar dreads, the moment when truth knocks on the door. And when it did, Derek Coleman was standing on the other side, unprepared for the storm that was about to hit. Because Tiana Brooks was done hiding. She was walking straight into the lion's den, and she had no idea that this confrontation would be her last.
After weeks of threats, silence, and sleepless nights, Derek Coleman finally decided to act. He knew Tiana was serious about exposing him. He knew his lies were seconds away from collapsing. So he came up with a desperate plan, one that he thought could fix everything, at least for now. He told Tiana he was ready to make things right. He told her he was leaving his wife. He said he just needed time to move things around quietly so that no one would get hurt. For the first time in months, Tiana believed him again. Hope, fragile, beautiful, and dangerous, began to glow inside her heart. And to make his story believable, Derek went further than anyone expected. He found a small house in a quiet neighborhood, miles away from where he lived with Monica. He put the lease in someone else's name, furnished it, and told Tiana it would be their home, a new start for their family. He even spent weekends there with her, bringing groceries, laughing with her, playing the role of a man ready to start over. But every time he left that house, every time he returned to his wife and children, guilt wrapped tighter around his neck. To Tiana, it seemed like love. To Derek, it was camouflage, a way to keep her quiet, to buy her silence with comfort and promises. For a few weeks, it worked. Tiana was calm again. She believed him when he said, "I just need to handle a few things before I can move in for good." But deep down, she started to notice the truth, that the few things he needed to handle never changed. He still wore his wedding ring. He still avoided taking pictures together. He still spoke about his wife in a way that didn't sound like hate, but love. And that realization broke something inside her. Because no matter how much he gave her, the house, the money, the words, she could feel it. His heart wasn't with her. It was with Monica. One night, she confronted him. Tears streamed down her face as she said, "You're not leaving her, are you? You never planned to." Derek looked away, his silence saying more than words ever could. Tiana's voice cracked. "You can't play house with me while sleeping under her roof. That's not love, Derek. That's cowardice." He didn't respond. He simply left, quietly closing the door behind him, leaving her sobbing in the darkness. That night, Tiana sat in the small house he'd bought her, staring at the walls that were supposed to be the start of a new life. Instead, they felt like a cage, a lie with furniture. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. She realized he was never going to choose her. He was never going to face the truth. So she decided to force the truth out herself. Days later, she made a call to one of her friends and said, "I'm done pretending. He's been lying to both of us. I'm going to talk to his wife. She deserves to know who he really is." Her friend begged her not to go, but Tiana was calm. Too calm. On a gray Saturday afternoon, she got into her car and drove toward the Coleman residence, the place she had been told to never approach. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, but her resolve was unshaken. She wasn't going to be his secret anymore. When she pulled up outside the house, Derek was already there, working in the yard. He froze when he saw her car. His pulse spiked. He rushed toward her, whispering harshly, "What are you doing here? You can't be here, Tiana. Go home." But she shook her head. "No, I'm done going home alone. I'm done being quiet." Before he could stop her, she walked straight past him and up to the front door. Monica opened it, confused at first, then wary. Tiana's voice trembled as she said the words that shattered 3 lives at once. "My name is Tiana, and I'm pregnant with your husband's child." The world went still. The air seemed to vanish from the room. Monica's face turned pale, her eyes darted from Tiana to Derek, searching for a lie that wasn't there. Derek stood frozen, a man cornered by the truth he thought he could bury. Tiana didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked away, tears falling, but her shoulders straight. In her heart, she thought she had finally set herself free. But Derek wasn't thinking about freedom. He was thinking about everything he had just lost, his family, his image, his world. And as Tiana drove away, he knew one thing. If she spoke again, everything would collapse completely. By nightfall, that fear would turn to rage. And that rage would turn deadly.
The night after the confrontation, the neighborhood on Pinewood Drive was quiet. Too quiet. No one heard screams. No one saw a struggle. But someone, vanished. Tiana Brooks was nowhere to be found. Her friends said she never made it home that night. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her car, missing. At first, it didn't seem alarming. Maybe she just needed time to cool off. After all, the day before, she'd faced the one woman she swore she'd never have to meet, Derek's wife, Monica. And that meeting had not ended peacefully. But when 48 hours passed with no word, when her mother's calls went unanswered, and when her job reported her absent without notice, a quiet dread began to settle in. Her best friend Keisha was the first to speak to police. She told them everything about the affair, about the pregnancy, about the threats. She told them how Tiana had said, "If Derek won't tell her, I will," and how she had left that night determined to make him face the truth. That truth would be buried deeper than anyone imagined. Police began tracing Tiana's last known movements. Surveillance cameras caught her car leaving Derek's gated neighborhood around 9:42 p.m., but it never reached the main highway. Somewhere between those 2 points, she vanished. When detectives questioned Derek, he was calm, too calm. He told them he hadn't seen her in days, that their relationship was complicated, and that she'd been emotional lately because of the pregnancy. He spoke softly, measured, like a man rehearsing every word. But when investigators noticed something, tiny scratches on his forearms, a bruise forming near his collarbone, and when they asked how he got them, he said only one thing: work accident. The next morning, Tiana's car was found abandoned near a construction site outside the city. Inside were her purse, her keys, and a single ultrasound photo folded neatly in the cup holder. No signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle, just silence. Detectives searched the area for days. Helicopters, K-9 units, volunteers, but there was no trace of Tiana. The media picked up the story. Pregnant woman missing after confrontation with lover's wife. It spread fast, and with every passing hour, pressure mounted on Derek. Still, he maintained his innocence. Still, he said nothing. But beneath that cool exterior, something darker was beginning to unravel. Because while police were searching for a missing woman, Derek was searching for something else entirely. A way to hide what he had done. And within 1 week, the shocking truth behind Tiana's disappearance would send shockwaves through the entire city and expose the terrifying lengths one man would go to protect his secret life. It had been 9 long days since Tiana Brooks vanished. 9 days of unanswered questions. 9 days of hope fading into fear. For her mother, every morning began the same way, waiting by the phone, praying for a call that never came. For police, every lead was a dead end. Until the rain came. On a gray Friday morning, a highway maintenance crew near Fayette County made a discovery that would end the search and begin a nightmare. Behind a line of tall grass, just yards from a rural service road, workers noticed the back end of a car, half buried in mud. And what they found inside was every mother's worst fear. Tiana's body was wrapped in a blanket, placed in the back seat, as if someone had tried and failed to hide what they'd done. Her phone was gone, her jewelry missing. But one thing remained: the ultrasound photo she'd carried everywhere, now stained, torn, and pressed against the window. The medical examiner's report was devastating. Tiana had died from manual strangulation. There were bruises on her wrists and defensive marks on her hands, proof that she fought for her life and for the life of the unborn child she would never meet. Detectives knew immediately this was no random act. It was personal, and every trail pointed back to Derek Miles. They brought him in again for questioning. This time, the calm was gone. The mask had started to crack. Investigators pressed him with the evidence: cell tower data showing his phone in the same area where Tiana's body was found, his fingerprints on her car door, and a single strand of her hair discovered on the floor mat of his truck. When confronted, Derek insisted he was being framed. He claimed he'd helped her move some things the week before. That's why the prints and hair were there. But the detectives had more. They had a witness. A truck driver had come forward, saying he saw a man matching Derek's description near that same road on the night Tiana disappeared, pulling what looked like a blanket from the back of his vehicle. And then there was the biggest piece of all: a text message recovered from Tiana's phone records, sent just hours before she died. It read, "I'll tell her if you don't. I'm done keeping your secret." That message was never delivered, because before she could send it, Derek stopped her permanently. The walls were closing in, and Derek could feel them. He broke down during a third interrogation, his story shifting from denial to desperation. He claimed it was an accident, that they argued, that she got hysterical, that he just wanted to calm her down. But the bruises told a different story. So did the evidence. And the child she carried, innocent, unborn, voiceless, was proof of what he truly silenced that night. When police finally announced the discovery to the public, the city erupted in grief and outrage. A mother was gone, an unborn life lost, and a double affair had turned into a double tragedy. For Monica, Derek's wife, it was the final betrayal. She had believed the lies, defended her husband against whispers, never knowing she was sleeping beside a murderer. And for detectives, the question that remained wasn't if Derek killed Tiana, but why. What could drive a man to murder the woman carrying his child? Was it fear of exposure, pride, or something darker, a heart so twisted by deceit that love and control had become the same thing?
As prosecutors prepared their case, a horrifying truth was about to unfold in the courtroom. A truth that would show the world exactly how far Derek went to protect his double life. When the trial of Derek Miles began, The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that only grief and disbelief can bring. Reporters filled every bench. Camera crews waited outside the courthouse steps, and in the front row sat Tiana's mother, clutching her daughter's framed photo against her chest, the same picture taken on the day she found out she was pregnant. Derek entered wearing a gray suit, calm, expressionless, but his eyes told another story, one of exhaustion, fear, and guilt. He was charged with first-degree murder and fetal homicide. The prosecution called it a crime of betrayal and control. The defense called it a moment of passion gone too far. But as the evidence unfolded, it became clear this wasn't an accident. This was a cover-up. The prosecution began with the foundation, the affair that spanned nearly 2 years, dozens of secret messages, hotel receipts, and photos, intimate, affectionate, undeniable. They showed the jury how Derek had built a double life, balancing 2 worlds with calculated precision, a devoted husband by day, a secret lover by night.
But when that balance began to crumble, he chose the unthinkable: silence through violence. Detectives testified about the GPS data from his truck, how it matched perfectly with the timeline of Tiana's disappearance. Forensic analysts revealed microscopic fibers linking his clothing to the blanket Tiana's body was wrapped in. And a witness, a gas station attendant, recalled seeing Derek at 10 p.m. that night, sweating, nervous, and paying cash for fuel. But the most chilling testimony came from Monica, Derek's wife. She took the stand with trembling hands. Her voice cracked as she recounted the night Tiana came to their home, pregnant, angry, desperate for the truth. She told the jury how Derek begged her not to believe a word of it, how he swore it was all lies. But deep down she knew. She'd seen the distance, the secretive phone calls, the sudden late nights. When prosecutors asked her, "Did you still love him?" she paused and said quietly, "I did, but the man I loved didn't exist." Those words silenced the room. The jury sat motionless, absorbing every detail of a man who had everything: a stable job, a loving wife, a home, and risked it all for deceit, then destroyed a life to hide it. The defense tried to paint Derek as overwhelmed, a man caught between 2 worlds, pressured, emotional, and panicking in the heat of the moment. But the autopsy told the truth. Tiana's injuries were deliberate, sustained, intentional. Her struggle for air lasted long enough for him to stop, but he didn't. The prosecution's closing argument was simple, haunting, unforgettable. He didn't kill her out of love. He killed her out of fear. Fear of being exposed. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing the perfect life he pretended to have. When the jury returned after 2 days of deliberation, the courtroom held its breath. Guilty on all counts. Derek Miles was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, Monica wept silently. Tiana's mother whispered a prayer, her eyes fixed on the man who took everything from her. And for the first time, Derek looked up, but not at the judge, not at his lawyer, at the photo of Tiana on the evidence board, the woman he said he loved, the woman he destroyed. For the community, justice had been served, but for those who loved Tiana, justice could never bring her back. It could never replace the heartbeat silenced inside her. It could never erase the image of what true betrayal truly looks like when it turns deadly. In the end, the story of Derek and Tiana wasn't just about love or jealousy. It was about control, deception, and the devastating cost of living a double life. He thought he could keep 2 worlds apart forever, until the day they collided and buried him under the truth he tried so hard to hide.
The trial was over. The cameras were gone. The headlines faded. But for the families left behind, the pain never did. In the weeks after the verdict, Monica Miles filed for divorce. She moved out of the family home, the place where love had once lived, now just a memory soaked in betrayal. She spoke to no one for months. Friends say she struggled with shame, not for what she'd done, but for what she never saw coming, for trusting a man who wore two faces so perfectly she couldn't tell which one was real. For Tiana's mother, life became a quiet cycle of grief and disbelief. She still visits the small memorial near the road where her daughter's car was found. A single wooden cross, flowers faded by rain, and a picture of Tiana smiling, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. She says she goes there to talk, not to her daughter, but to her grandchild, the one she never got to hold. In her words, they both had a future, and one man took it because he couldn't live with the truth. Tiana's story became more than a local tragedy. It became a warning, a mirror reflecting the dark corners of love, lies, and control. For investigators, this case was another painful reminder that domestic violence doesn't always begin with fists. Sometimes it starts with secrets, with manipulation, with someone saying, "Don't tell anyone." And by the time the truth comes out, it's already too late. As the years passed, Derek adjusted to life behind bars. He remained silent, never admitting to the crime, never expressing remorse. Just a man trapped inside the walls he built for himself long before prison. His double life cost him everything: his freedom, his family, and the two lives he can never bring back. But the story doesn't end with him. It ends with a message, one that echoes through every home touched by betrayal and silence. Love should never hurt. It should never be hidden in the shadows, and it should never cost someone their life. Tiana's name now stands among the countless women whose stories remind us that secrets kill, and silence protects the wrong people. So, tonight, as we close this story, remember her not as the woman who loved the wrong man, but as the woman who wanted honesty, truth, and peace, and paid for it with everything she had. This has been another heartbreaking true story, a story of love turned deception, and deception turned deadly. If you believe in justice, if you stand with every voice silenced by abuse and betrayal, make sure you subscribe to Crime Vault, because here we tell their stories, so they'll never be forgotten. Tiana Brooks, gone too soon, but her truth still speaks.